Government Orders, Government Bills Commons, resuming debate at Report Stage of Bill C-86, Budget and Implementation Act 2018, number 2.
It's resuming debate. Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Yukon.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Has the lowest unemployment in 40 years. And what's also amazing is that Yukon is the lowest. It recently has been the lowest in the country. You know, the North normally has higher levels of unemployment. So this is fantastic for my riding. It's amazing and exciting for Yukoners that we're virtually at full economic employment. So what has caused this, great level of work in Canada, particularly in the Yukon? And I believe there's two items that have a major contribution to this, and I will just go on to these items. First of all is record levels of infrastructure spending, double what's ever been spent before by any government in any part of Canada. And in my riding, as an example, I've already announced over 60 projects for over $400 million. And it's virtually every community in the Yukon. You know, there's probably nothing more gut-wrenching as not being able to feed your family, to have a job, to pay the bills, to say to your family you're going to have to move, you don't know where, you can't afford it, you can't send your kids on school trips or buy them clothes similar to their other kids, or even to have good food. So the fact that there's so many infrastructure projects putting so many people to work is so edifying. And that's not the end of it. We've just signed last May an infrastructure agreement for $445 million more over the next 10 years for our riding. The second reason I think that's a big contribution to the low unemployment rates is the contributions that we've made to those the needy, all different categories of needy people in Canada and in my riding. First of all, the seniors, by increasing the GIS, thousands of seniors have been lifted out of poverty. A second group is students, low-income students in particular, but we've increased support for students in general and more support for low-income students. And in fact, we've also doubled the number of summer student jobs, and there's still more waiting. We had more applications, could even fill that even when the number of jobs were doubled. A third group of low-income people that we've supported with huge amounts of funds is with the child tax credit. You could get up to over $6,000. A low-income person, once again, it's income attested, and a single mother could get up over $6,000 a child under this. Some people talk about canceled sports credit or credits like that where you might get $50 or $100, but I think people would rather have this $6,000 to really help them raise their child. And the other thing we did was made it non-taxable. Parts of it in the past were taxable. I had a single mother, I think it was a reporter, came to me in shock when it came to the tax part of the year and found that she had to pay back a huge amount of income tax on the child tax credit, which she was not prepared for at all. In fact, this has been increased recently and faster than we thought we'd be able to do by indexing that child tax credit. So it's going to continue to rise, and that will, in my particular riding alone, will increase $5.6 million over 2018 to 2023 for very low-income children. Another area that helps low-income families is daycare. And as you know, we had a national daycare program back under the Honourable Ken Dryden, but the opposition parties got together and replaced Prime Minister Martin with Prime Minister Harper, who cancelled the National Child Care Program. But now we've initiated another program, a new program, and for my riding again, the agreement's been signed with the federal government and the minister in the Yukon for over $7 million over 3 years. Another group that's been helped is veterans, and the one item I mentioned with them is the employees make trips to the Yukon 3 or 4 times a year to help Yukon veterans and veterans of the RCMP. Another group, of course, of disadvantage is mental health and addictions, and we've contributed this year alone. As you know, that's been a high priority for our government. It's been a big need of missing funding in Canada and my riding alone will get $1 million of that roughly this year. So this deals with contributions to a vast majority of low-income people. But there's one group, large group, that I didn't mention, and that is the low-income workers. And so in this budget, we added a low-income worker benefit so they could keep more of their hard-earned money and to help them pay the bills. They're getting more expensive for everyone. And this, in my riding alone, this Canada Workers Benefit is going to help 1,600 workers have more funds. So you can imagine across Canada how big this program is. It helps 2 million workers across Canada and will lift 70,000 of them out of poverty. So all these contributions to the needy, you ask why I bring this up in the context of the great boost to the economy, the full employment. And the reason is, well, first of all, of course, it's the right thing to do. That's the most important reason to do it. But the second reason is these people really need these funds. And of course, they spend them right away. It goes to small business, whose taxes we've reduced, but it goes to small business and expenditures in the economy. So all this employment actually leads to another problem. Now, problem in a way it's nice to have, but a lack of employees. And so we've all noticed, everyone's heard in the House of Commons and other debates, the number of improvements to the immigration system to deal with this and increased training funds. In fact, the 2016 budget was a training budget. And a significant portion of those funds go to training Aboriginal people, which is important in my riding. Something that's really been exciting in the bill for me, because mining's so important in my riding. In fact, it was the biggest contributor to the GDP virtually every year since, not last century, but the century before, since 1897. And every year since 2003, for anyone who wasn't here at that time, I've been lobbying very hard to get the mineral exploration tax credit extended. In my riding of the exploration projects, the vast majority of them depend on this credit. I've been fighting year after year, no matter who's in government, to get that extended. And it indeed was extended each year. And I was so exciting that again this year it was extended. And of course the PDAC, perhaps the biggest mining association in the world, I'm not sure, and MAC, and the Yukon Chamber of Commerce, in fact the Yukon Chamber of Mines, thanking them for applauding my efforts the last Geoscience Forum a couple weeks ago for lobbying for this every year. But something even more exciting has happened, is that in the fall economic statement, the minister announced that, and as I said, PDAC was asking for this too. I think they were asking not only for a 1-year extension, but a 3-year extension of the first priority of their a number of things they were looking for. And the minister announced not 1-year extension, not a 3-year extension, but a 5-year extension. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A 5-year extension. It's so critical to such a big industry in Canada. So I'm so excited about this. And, you know, finance ministers, no matter what party you're in, they're sort of the ones that say no to all the things that come forward. So that for the minister to say yes, to make this expenditure is so exciting for me and for my riding and for the mining industry. So I just say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to the Minister of Finance for this this great success story. And of course, mining of the industries is the biggest employer of Indigenous people, 16,500 jobs in Canada. Another problem that all this employment creates is a need for housing. And as one of the first members of the Yukon Anti-Poverty Coalition, of course, we've been lobbying for this for years as well, as affordable housing. And so that is the new national housing plan, again, the biggest in Canadian history of anywhere, $40 billion. And I've already announced projects in Whitehorse. A vast majority of the communities, the population of my riding in the communities of Whitehorse, Carmacks, Haines Junction, Burwash, Old Crow, Pelly Crossing, Dawson, Watson Lake, and Carmacks. I'm almost out of time, so I'd just say also very exciting is the $1 million for the Women's Entrepreneurship Program. Congratulations to Women's Business Network in the Yukon and Tammy Bees. Another $32 million for the Yukon government, who will spend it and help the economy. And CANOR, finally, our Economic Development Agency, was about to expire when this budget came in, and thank again to the Minister of Finance. He not only made it permanent and $20 million a year and another $2 million for innovations and skills, and funded the huge innovation center so that Yukon is in with the digital economy like everyone else. For all these reasons, you can see why we're very excited in my riding about the economic interventions by the Minister of Finance.